Hi, thanks very much for taking the time to do this 10 minutes with ILPN interview. I was wondering, just to start, if you would mind introducing yourself, where you're from and what you do.
I'm Platon Tinios. I'm an economist. I work in Greece. And for this academic year, I'm visiting the London School of Economics.
Yeah. And how would you explain what you do to a layperson, someone who isn't familiar with the...
Well, I arrived at looking at long-term care through the economics of pensions and aging. I mean, it turns to me very quickly, if you look at pensions, you discover that pensions is only possibly the easiest part of the aging challenge. And it's easiest in the sense of being easy to define what needs to be done. The really interesting thing, and this is what drew me into it, is to see the question of long-term care, and specifically the ways that the same needs for long-term care of older individuals are met in completely different systems, in completely different ways. So the particular work that I was doing was actually presenting some kind of benchmarking of how the needs for long-term care are met in a wide sample of European countries, stretching from the north, Denmark, Sweden, to the south, Spain, Italy, and Greece.
So how would you describe long-term care in your country? What kind of services are there and for whom are they provided?
Well, the need for long-term care is primarily provided by the family. I mean, the family is the provider of last resort, and in Greece, as in many countries, the last resort is also the first. So there's very little formal long-term care, and what there is not allocated in a way that would help the primary providers, which is the family. Now that means that the people who don't have family resources, who live a long way away from their family, are particularly disadvantaged from the others. So the kind of inequalities that you get in the bureaucratic system, you have a different sort of inequalities turning up in a familial system. So the question is how you combine the two so that you leave no gaps.
So I was wondering, Platon, how would you describe long-term care in your country? What do the services look like and for whom are they provided?
Well, the services are provided by the family. It's a system which is based on the family. Now, the family plays a very central role in all systems. In every system, the family is ultimately the provider of last resort. The problem in Greece and a lot of southern Europe, it is also the provider of last resort is also the provider of first resort, in the sense that there is state provision, but it's very patchy, leaves a great number of gaps, and the people who are particularly disadvantaged are those who don't have family resources to fall back on, because for them it is not at all sure that there will be provision by the state or by local authorities.
So Platon, what would you say are the three biggest priorities with respect to long-term care in Greece?
The overwhelming priority is being aware of the problem. The thing about relying on the family is that the family is, because it places a great deal of emphasis on this, is very good at dealing with the problem, but then hiding it away. So the public at large is not aware of the extent of weight of burden that is imposed on the family. So being aware of the size of the problem and how it's going to evolve over time, I think is the top priority. Now the second priority is how do you respond to that? So it's an organization which allows the needs to come up. The problem with a lot of organizations that it places the needs of the providers before the needs of the recipients. So you need the kind of organization that can listen to the need and be able to respond to the need, rather than provide what is easiest to provide. And the third priority, alas, is finance. Somebody has to pay for it. And that finance, in the case of Greece as well as other countries, means that you have to move the spotlight away from pensions and pension deficits on to how to finance long-term care.
And these priorities that we've been discussing, do you think that they've changed at all in the last 5 years? If they have, has it been a very big change?
Well, as you know, Greece has been in a major upheaval, an economic crisis that has meant that over the last 7 years we have lost a quarter of GDP per head. So that means that every person in Greece is a quarter poorer than we were 10 years ago. So there's a lot of shock to absorb. And the time that is spent has meant that the spotlight was taken by public finance short-term issues, and longer-term challenges such as aging and long-term care have receded in the background. And one of the ways that they were able to do that is because the family looks after its own needs, and hence makes it easy for the state to cut public expenditure in the field of services, whilst safeguarding other areas of priority.
If you had the power to enact one long-term care policy of your choice, what would it be and why?
Well, that's it's a big question. I think one would have to go back to awareness and bringing issues out to the open, because once problems are acknowledged, then sooner or later they will have to be dealt with. The real problem is hidden problems would lead to no solutions at all.
In the next, in terms of research priorities, is there any area in long-term care that you think needs particular attention and an outstanding piece of research to be completed?
I think so. I think one of the south of Europe, Greece is one example, is we have a situation where the old are arriving at old age with limited financial resources, but at the same time they're housing rich. So they tend to live in larger houses, much bigger than their needs, and which in many cases actually impose a lot of burden on the people living in them. Now, these houses at the moment are used in a way to cement intergenerational solidarity, because the next generation is expecting to get the family home, and in exchange provide services. Now, this implicit arrangement, which has been working for generations, obviously, has to be formalized in a sense. And I think this is one very important area of both academic research, but also sort of financial ingenuity, because you would have to have sort of the kind of financial instruments which allow people to disengage from housing and invest that capital into care.
So to end, I'm going to ask you for a series of questions. I'd like, if possible, for you to respond with a number between 1 and 10, where 1 is low and 10 is high. So firstly, what policy priority is allocated to long-term care in Greece?
Unfortunately, only a 2 or a 3.
So quite low.
Very low.
Yeah. How aware is the general public about what the long-term care system offers to them?
2. Very low.
Yeah. How well does the system support people with long-term care needs?
1.
How well does the system support the needs of carers?
If it's possible to go below than 1, the carers are basically forgotten about.
Oh, that's unfortunate to hear. And how integrated are social care and healthcare systems or services in Greece with respect to long-term care?
In some cases they are integrated, in others there is no link at all, so it's probably a 4. Yeah. They're moving in the right direction.
Well, thanks very much for your time, Platon. It's very much appreciated.